So today my son and I will be doing a review on a 1979 Fantasia 35 Mark II. Good afternoon! Today we are going to do a review on a Fantasia 35 sailboat. Now these are older boats produced from the mid-70s until the early 80s. So the review is going to be a little bit challenging in the fact that all these boats have been heavily modified and upgraded since the early 80s. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a review on my Fantasia 35, and you can compare that to compare notes to whichever boat you are looking at. My general notes with regards to the Fantasia 35 is they are fantastic liveaboards, long-term liveaboards or cruisers. Some specifics on the boat before I get into showing you around. She's 35 feet long, 11-foot beam, 4-foot 9-inch draft. She's whopping 24,000 pounds. Tankage, if you have the original tankage in her, she's got real cruising tankage, 500 liters or about 125 gallons of diesel fuel, and 1,000 liters or about 250 gallons of fresh water. She's well powered with mine has a Perkins 4108, so about 50 horsepower, big meaty 3-bladed prop that really bites in. Another feature that you will notice about the boat as I show you around is she has really good privacy separation. Another reason she's good for families or entertaining overnight. Again, if you're considering this boat as a tiny home or a full-time liveaboard, we did live on it year-round in Canada, including through the winter. It's got this boat is insulated. My model is. I don't imagine they all are. So with the insulation around the hull and the teak decks, it stayed pretty warm inside year-round. For heat away from the anchor, the only thing I have for heat is alcohol heat, but it does the trick for us. And with 6 12-volt fans and all the opening port lights, it's usually not too hot. Today outside there's a humidex of 40 degrees Celsius, so it is a hot day, so that's why I'm perspiring a bit. Feel of the layout of the boat. Forward cabin goes aft into the Salon, dining port side, chart table countertop, starboard side, galley, workshop, very steep stairs, which could be a problem for people who maybe have limited mobility or certain types of dogs like my Basset Hound. Head or bathroom, and aft cabin. So that's the general layout of the boat. Ironically, making YouTube videos with a toddler is much like sailing with a toddler. A lot more of your time and attention goes to the toddler than it does to the YouTube video. But we wouldn't have it any other way, would we? So what I think we will do is we'll start at the bow of the boat and we'll work our way aft. So the first thing that you're going to see is a very spacious forward cabin, spacious for a 35-foot boat anyway. So you got a single berth down either side of the V-berth. This is an insert. The about over 6 feet of head clearance up here. There are cedar lined closets in the forward and after cabin. I believe the cedar lining is an upgrade, but it smells fantastic. Beautiful woodwork. 4 portholes in the forward cabin. Those are great for little guys peering out. Brass portholes too, so they've got an aesthetic appeal. Up here on the starboard side, the large steel thing is the emergency tiller. So the boat is equipped with a serious usable emergency steering system, unlike a lot of boats. There's 12 volt lighting up here, 12 volt fans, lots of storage as you can see. Now the bed, plenty spacious. There's me laying down on the starboard side. You can see lots of room. And again, there's me laying down widthwise across the bed. So the bed's over 6 feet wide and over 6 feet long. So it's a really large cabin or bed, V-berth. There is a solid door that goes on that. I've got the door kind of permanently removed because I find it just gets in the way. And of course a overhead hatch for fresh air and light. Okay, so the next feature we're going to look at is the main salon. So this includes a very large deep freeze and fridge, which can be seen here. So you see the fridge door is the forward, the fridge is the forward half of the deep freeze, and then the after portion is a very large deep freeze, and on top of that is some large counter space, which I tend to use as a chart table and a baby change table. So underneath here is the deep freeze, storage along the back, lots of storage along the sides. Something I forgot to show you in the forward cabinet we'll look at quickly is in the deck head there is a magnetic compass, so you can check your course while you're in bed. And then in the salon we've got another magnetic compass in the bulkhead, so you can check your course while you're eating dinner or watching TV or playing games. Lots of storage under the seats. The batteries are under the seats. You can sit comfortably 5 or 6 around the table, I guess, which is folds out, and like just about any boat, the table folds down for an additional double berth, which I never use because there are 2 private sleeping cabins already. Charge controller for my solar panel, GX2200 VHF radio and AIS receiver, stereo, a couple of handheld radios, and this is my life jacket locker. Whoops, it's a bit of a mess. I've always got about 8 life jackets on board, plus a couple of kids' life jackets and a dog life jacket. The galley is it's a functional galley, double sink, convection microwave, tile countertop and backsplash. I use an alcohol stove. I've got also an electric range for cooking at dock. Lots of storage in the galley space, bowls and plates over top, glasses behind the sink. There is a 12 volt pump as well as a hand pump for seawater, propane hot water, which I don't use, and storage there, storage everywhere, storage under the sink. The fuel tank is located under that floorboard, 500 liter fuel tank, which may need replaced if you're looking at a boat that spent a lot of time in salt water. Under this hatch over here you have your 1,000 liter fresh water tanks, 2 of them, 500 liters each. They may need replaced as well. Something that you will frequently hear about with the Fantasia 35 is rusty chain plates. So a common complaint you hear with these boats is rusted out chain plates. As you can see, my chain plates look like they're practically new. This is a 1979. So if you do look at one of these boats and you inspect the chain plates, if they look like that, you're golden. Next thing we're going to look at is my rather messy workshop, but this is a 35-foot boat with 2 sleeping cabins and a workshop, which is almost unheard of. Has a bench vise, there's my battery charger, workbench, which mine is covered in stuff. There's one of the 2 manual bilge pumps. This boat also has 2 12-volt bilge pumps, power steering, fridge compressor, 110 and DC breaker panel, Down here we have the battery switch as well as the pull for the Halon firefighting system. And here is access to the port side of the engine. The engine room has three-sided access, port, starboard, and forward, so excellent engine access. And opening port light in the workshop. And I guess I forgot to mention that in the main salon is we have 5 brass opening port lights. There is 12-volt lighting. I tend to prefer to use my kerosene lamp. I prefer kerosene lamp when I'm at anchor because I don't have to worry about running out of electricity. Alright, next we're going to look at the head, or the bathroom. Now if you are looking at this boat as a liveaboard or a tiny home, there's one feature that not all the ladies are going to like, and that is the fact that it doesn't have a separate shower stall. It only has a wet shower. So there's the shower attachment, and the water drains down into the bilge. But as you can see, there's a mirror, there's medicine cabinets, there's a sink, there's a toilet, there's everything you need. Actually, lots of medicine cabinets and makeup storage. And here, this is also my pantry. So this is my dry pantry in addition to the fridge that we saw earlier. Dry pantry again. Lots of storage space. That's about 2 feet deep in there. And walking aft, we now see the aft cabin. So this is a beautiful big cabin. The bed's not quite as long, or sorry, quite as wide or quite as long, but it is still 2 adults can very comfortably sleep on here. When we lived aboard full time, 3 of us lived aboard on here full time, including the little guy, and we slept when it was just my wife and I, we slept back here in the aft cabin. Then when the little guy came along, all 3 of us moved to a larger forward cabin. But as you can see, very nice cabin. 2 brass opening port lights, overhead skylight and hatch for fresh air and lighting. There's another fancy brass port light there. Another cedar lined closet there. Huge closet, very deep. And then access to your stuffing boxes down through that hatch, and that gives you access to the hatch, the after end of the engine compartment as well. Heavy duty hydraulic steering system located back here. Big ram, looks like something that belongs on a tractor, not on a family cruising yacht. Additionally, lots of ventilation. There are 4 door raids, 2 in the aft cabin here, and then 2 in the salon as well. The woodwork's beautiful throughout. Okay, a bit of a walk around the deck. We've got anchor, plow on port, Danforth on starboard, got about 180 feet of chain, aluminum spars because this is a Mark II, teak decks. My door raids, the vents there, they need some work. Okay, Oliver. Lifeline safety netting for toddlers and dogs. Nice cockpit with a Dodger and cushion seating, nice comfortable wheel position that you can sit behind. The stern is kind of busy on this boat, which can be a little bit annoying. You see several hundred feet of kedge anchor line, couple of life rings, barbecue, dinghy davits, propane locker. Okay, so I thought the review wouldn't be of much relevance if I didn't go for a boat ride. So here we are, we're out on the St. Lawrence River. I'm going to do some motoring, I'm going to do some sailing, show you how the boat handles on different points of sail. I'm single-handed, so I didn't film myself coming out of dock because I forgot, because I was focused on a bunch of different things, but good for demonstration purposes that I am single-handed, because you'll be able to see that the boat can indeed be sailed single-handed. Oh, a note on fuel mileage I wanted to talk about yesterday is I reviewed my logbook from last year. I haven't added fuel. It's a 500 liter diesel tank. I haven't added fuel in 13 months, and since the last time I added fuel, according to my logbook, I've motored about 170 nautical miles. My tank's about 2/3 full, so I would say that you could confidently get a fuel range of 500 miles plus, which is good, you know, if you're sailing particularly some of the big rivers around, like the lower Mississippi. That's where the fuel range really comes in handy. Another thing I wanted to mention is this is a Mark II model, so the early Mark I models were noted for some weather helm, but this one has a skeg hung rudder fairly far aft as opposed to the Mark I, which has the rudder attached right to the keel. So this boat does sail better than the Mark I. It's got substantially less weather helm. So I'm going to get some sails set, and that'll be all for now. Okay, so here we are sailing, kind of closest to the wind, and the boat's sailing well. Speed is 3.5 knots, but we're sailing against a 1.5 knot current because we're in the St. Lawrence River. So, you know, we're making 5 knots in 7 to 8 knots true wind speed. 5 knots through the water, I guess. So when people say that the sailing characteristics of this boat are not great, they're also not terrible. I mean, they're the sailing characteristics you would expect of a heavy displacement cruiser. 5 knots through the water and 8 knots of wind. I don't know what more could you ask for, really? Sure, modern, wide, fin-keeled boat's going to accelerate faster and decelerate faster and turn sharper, but this boat's got the speed. It's got reasonable speed, in my opinion. And I could even stand to tighten up the sails some. I'm single-handed, so you know how that is. It can be tricky, especially sailing in a busy river like this. There we go. There's a gust of wind. Took us up to 4.2 knots over ground, so that's over 5 through the water. Again, 8, maybe a little bit more than 8 knots of true wind speed, maybe 10, but certainly not a windy day. Okay, here we are now. We're beam reaching and 7 to 10 knots of wind. Speed over ground 5.4 wind, 5.4 knots. That's again, that's respectable. So when you read that in the reviews that they're not a good sailing boat, I guess it's all relative, right? Because they sail pretty reasonably. So you know the water line length here is playing a factor. Again, beam reach. And like most any boat, you know, sailing on a broad reach, or I guess that's what you would call this. We're kind of on a broad reach. Sailing about 4 knots. Maybe the wind's come down since yeah, 4 knots. Okay, here we are motoring back to dock now. Kind of cruising RPM with the Perkins. If you can see my plan to nav there on my GPS, 7.3 knots up to 7.7 knots. And the boat will travel all day long, day in and day out for that, like that. She'll go probably 3 days straight with that fuel, making those kinds of speeds. So, you know, if you need to get out of the weather and you need to motor into some nasty stuff, she's got the fuel range and she's got the power, which is a huge safety feature right there. Last spring, I was in that kind of a situation. I motored into about a 25 knot east wind for about 24 hours. Seas were up to 8 feet, I guess, kind of 5 to 8 feet. And I didn't get seasick. The little guy didn't get seasick. We had, I guess, 4 other adults on board. 3 of them complained of some degree of seasickness. One of them was, you know, vomiting profusely. But you know, that's not bad for those kinds of conditions. It's a very comfortable boat. You know, it's got the power. It's safe. I mean, this cockpit is, as you can see, high and dry, long way from the water, small. Great for the little guy because it's got size to keep it in, and then there's the extra layer of lifeline netting to keep them in. Hey Oliver, say hi to the camera. Jeez. Good review.